I know that there is a story between you and Alexis of how you actually got the idea to start doing this. So do you want to maybe talk about what happened? And
Go ahead, Alexis. Well, actually, it started with I had gone to my son was at the new school, and he said, "Mom, there's a seminar, or a panel about Jean-Michel Basquiat." And I go, "Oh, wow, you know, this is like in 2012." And it was you, Al, and Michael, and Anina Noze. And the room was packed out of young people who were interested in Jean-Michel Basquiat. And I was like, whoa. And then I started realizing I had this work, you know, it was in the apartment, it was the walls. And I realized I had to do something with this. And people started contacting me, and I had tea with Sarah. We just had Hurricane Sandy, and a lot of the work was stored in a safety deposit box, and it was in a basement on First Avenue, and we had flooding, and I started worrying about it, but I was really busy because I was working at the hospital and we were flooded. And so you know, about the end of the year I went there, and I opened this treasure trove up, and that I hadn't seen in 25 years, and I was like astounded. And so I told Sarah, I had tea with Sarah.
You showed me everything.
And I showed you, and I was like.
And then she showed me these wonderful photographs that she had taken of Jean, and they're like sequential, and I thought, oh my God, I can animate him. I can bring him back to life with this, you know, these sequential photographs. And then seeing this very early work of his, like working out his process on paper, on where you were in school at Rockefeller University.
Yeah, I was working
and,
there.
Yeah, the stationery that he was drawing on.
Yes.
And I thought to myself, oh, we can make a 20-minute film. It could be like a little poem about New York and about Jean and this, and then it just turned into something more. And Al is the other half of Samo. So he and Jean-Michel were doing all these wonderful works on the street together.
When I first met them.
Yeah, in 1978 we were doing this graffiti. It was our conceptual graffiti campaign. Different from other graffiti where it was, this was intended for the general public as opposed to just graffiti between graffiti writers. And it was made very legible. And it was basically, I mean, the gist of it was we were just making fun of the general public and bringing, you know, bringing up points about consumerism and just general mediocrity and stuff that we, you know, that I guess made us angry or
yeah, but it was very poetic.
About, yeah.
And profound.
And profound. And it was always like, oh, I better think about that when you would walk by anything that Samo did.
Yeah, and then a lot of people confuse the writings that Jean-Michel did on his own later on, like post Samo, like in 1980, he was doing some poetry that was more kind of like I guess almost like a cut up poetry style that he did without actually doing any cut up, but from his mind, and that was post Samo, but it was it very much purely Jean-Michel, like the. You know, like plush safe, he think, and that sort of stuff, which was, yeah, that was later on. But by 79, the Samo graffitis was, I mean, that project was pretty much over. After the Village Voice did a feature on us, and at that point I felt, coming from graffiti culture, I felt it was over. That there's no reason to continue it because we've been outed, kind of thing. So you know, the jig is up, kind of thing. But he continued to work under the name of Samo for a short period, and then I think when he obviously wrote "Samo is Dead" to kind of move on to the next thing. In other, he sort of signed it off and said, "I'm moving on to the next thing."
Yeah, but you have a beautiful story which I don't have in the film about the triptych.
Oh, the triptych. No, it's a diptych. It's
a diptych.
A 2-panel piece. Jean-Michel, like, yeah, and this is like in 1986. I mean, this is years, you know, he's already become a successful painter, and I hadn't seen him in a while, and he showed up at my my apartment on East First Street, another one of those apartments where you have to yell up, and there was none of the buzzers in the Lower East Side worked at all. Anyway, and he's yelling, I hear somebody yelling, and sure enough, it's Jean-Michel. I hadn't seen him in like 2 years or something, and he had some paintings under his, under his arm. They were kind of big paintings, 24 by 36 paintings, and he comes upstairs, and it was like, he gives me these paintings. I want these. I want you to have these, and it was, it was very brief, and I was still married to Jane then, and we had these paintings, and it's the message on the painting was, to and from Walla. Walla was like an endearing term that we used for each other. It's a long story. I won't give you the details of that. And then he said, "Semo está en algo," which is, Jean was half Puerto Rican, and I'm Puerto Rican, and it means "Semo" is happening, kind of. That's basically what it means. Anyway, so it was intended for me. He made that piece specifically for me, and about a year later, I actually, you know what? I didn't appreciate it, and that's, youth does that to us, right? It makes us arrogant sometimes. And I sold the painting, and it wasn't for drugs. It was actually for recording. Somehow that word got out there, and that I sold them for drugs. That never happened. I sold it because I wanted recording equipment. So I bought like a Tascam, a 4-track cassette recording system, and all this, and these monitors, all this fancy stuff. But I sold it for $3,500, and I think he got wind of it. He was probably quite pissed off about it. And then, because a lot of his friends had sold, and we were like, we didn't. It's not like we thought, we'll never see Jean again. Fast forward, I sell the thing. I don't see it for 35 years. There were times when I actually tried to hunt it down to see what happened to this painting, and I always hit a wall. I always hit a brick wall in trying to find out what happened to it. So yeah, fast forward about 2017, what was it? 2017? Anyway. 2019, I'm invited to lunch with a scholar and a gentleman named Francesco Polizzi, who is an early collector of Jean-Michel. Some of his work has appeared in the show at the Vuitton show and at the Brandt show here in New York. So he owns major pieces. And my name he'd come across my name numerous times and wanted to meet me. We had a friend in common, and so we arranged to have lunch. He's got a wonderful townhouse up on the Upper East Side. He's like a Harvard, absolute scholar and a true gentleman. He makes this wonderful lunch, Italian guy, and then he gives me a tour of his art, and. At one point, he's showing me this painting. I don't know who it was by. It was a tree or something. And I turn around, and lo and behold, I fucking jumped off. I literally jumped up because there were the two paintings. It was unbelievable. It's like the paintings found me. It was unbelievable. So I finally was able to check that one off the list of finding those two paintings. It was pretty cool, actually.
That is cool. And it's cool that they landed there.
Yeah, and he had no idea. It wasn't like he was inviting me over to show me the painting. He had no idea. But a story, I think it was Rene Ricard who someone asked him to give some insight on the painting, and I guess he just made some shit up. He says that Walla, that endearing term that I said that we called each other Walla. He said he did that on a road trip from Washington to L.A. And it's like, and that was the story that was like put into like the catalog raisonné or whatever. But it stuck with it, and I said no, you have to change that. So that was the other benefit of finding it, was being able to correct the one of the many pieces of bullshit that has been recorded.
A lot of bullshit's been recorded.
History is history.
Which is why it's amazing that, Sarah, that you did this film, because it sets a historical record, and I thank you for that.
Yeah, absolutely.
I also love that you chose to focus on the early years. And what I find so inspiring about this film is a lot of time when we're looking at documentaries about artists, it's after their success. And this is everything leading up to his success. And so I feel like it feels possible then for younger people to become inspired by and know that this is possible. So what made you choose to kind of focus only on these years?
Because of the artwork that Alexis had. I mean, it was just about the early beginnings. And then I mean, on retrospect, I didn't think of it at the time, but what a privilege to have known what had fed this remarkable artist, who's really prophetic. You know, his work is as relevant now as it was, and that means a very strong artist 40 years ago. So I feel very privileged that and so many artists helped me make this film. And gave me their archives, and because they knew I was a witness, so I got a lot of help. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been able to afford. I couldn't get anybody to give me money for this film because they said there were enough Basquiat movies. They said, "Where's your first act, second act, and third act?" I said, "It's an essay film." So.
Yeah. I think it's so powerful, though, the way that it is. It worked out. And in my opinion, it's the best Basquiat film that there is. It has, like, this integrity and truth to it. And I also want to know, because I think what's so important and what sets this film apart from a lot of the others is the aspect of community. And you know, you see, like, Mud Club, Club 57, all the people, all the music. And I feel like, you know, New York, in a way, has lost a lot of that community. And it's memorialized in a way in this film. And so I'm wondering for all of you, like, what was your experience in a world that Basquiat was still a part of? And what's it like now? And what are the differences, do you think?
It's like day and night. I mean, first of all, one of the big factors for being able to for an art community as the one that existed back then was the fact that New York was in a depressed kind of state. It was a dangerous city. It was a very different climate. You could afford to live and have a part-time job and pay $300. That's an expensive apartment.
That was really expensive.
Yeah, it was $300.
It was $185.
So yeah, or $65. People, the rent was ridiculous, and you could, I mean, you were taking your life in your hands in some buildings to live there, because it's true. You'd have knives put up to your neck on a regular basis. But that was the environment. So it was possible for the brave and hardy to live that life, And now that doesn't exist because the economics of it is not feasible at this point.
Well, it's like it was so scary that I cut my hair really short so I looked like a boy, and I learned how to walk like a boy, so that people wouldn't bother me on the street, because I was going to graduate school, and I had to get from Little Italy to 7th Street and between 2nd and 3rd Avenues without anybody hassling me.
You still don't carry a pocketbook.
I still don't.
She carries a plastic bag more often.
All in a plastic bag. All my money's in here.
Well, so that's one thing was just that environment, but it was the time. I mean, we were
But I think there's a great movement going on where kids are putting down their iPhones and they're getting flip phones, and I think it's like we all need community. It's like we need to sit in a room with each other and talk about ideas. This thing where we're doing stuff over the internet, where we're not really having the same kind of communication, I think it's been really detrimental. And in a way, it allows the fascists to take over, because it's like divide and conquer. If we're not all hanging out in a room together, like figuring things out.
Yeah. Alexis, what was it like for you to live with him and be around his creativity?
Well, I realized that something profound was happening right here, and I mean, He used to say, I said this, I'm going to be a famous artist, and I really believed it, I don't know why, I was not, but it was just, I could feel like it was profound.
Yeah, he was like an amazing manifester.
Yes.
He kind of had a very strong will. It's cool to witness, yeah.
And I kind of teared up watching, because Diego Cortez died from COVID last year and a half ago, and Glenn's dead now too.
Yeah. I saw that. Yeah.
They were major forces. So.
Absolutely.
definitely.
I'd love to open it up to audience questions.
Personally, the
He's
photographer,
a
the
photographer.
JR who does the, I see,
He does graffiti, he does many things.
well, the work that I know, JR, is he does those multiple people in, images of.
But that's not how he started.
Well, I don't want to have a discussion about JR, but I don't see the connection.
There is no connection. He started by, writing on walls in France, in Paris, his message, just the same way Jean-Michel was doing. So
Well, I think Jean-Michel didn't just start by doing graffiti. He was drawing since he was a child, and graffiti was a very small part of his. That's part of the hype of the cult of the personality that kind of distorts that, makes him seem. I think it's easier for some art critics to say because he was black, he was a graffiti artist, but he just made a stop. And me and Lee in the film both say that Jean-Michel was not really part of graffiti culture in that classic sense, because he didn't come up through the ranks, start like we did when we were writing graffiti when we were 12 years old. Jean didn't have that experience.
I have a question. When Lee Lee did the backboard, when he did the
Handball
The
court.
handball court, when he came out of the subway, did the handball court. Is that what instigated like a lot of people to start, like you guys, like you and Jean, to start?
No, that was
because it was the same. It was the same year. So I'm just.
Yeah, but it wasn't. It had that had nothing to do.
It didn't.
With each
It was
other.
just like a synchronistic thing.
Yeah, but
Okay.
it's our graffiti was message oriented. It had nothing to do with painting pictures.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
not-
I just
it's not-
wondered if
it's
getting it out of the
apples and
subway.
oranges, yeah.
Okay.
No, but yeah, the subway was not a place for our messages. It was downtown art world, and anywhere between Tribeca, Soho, West Village, Chinatown, and the East Village was just where we were.
It was
walking
very
around.
directed.
Because we were walking around there. That's going to parties, people's friends' houses. That's where we lived, so that's why.
Okay.
Yeah, but no, I don't see a connection between.
I just wondered about that. I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, last night was fantastic walking home at -6 degrees. And it was like no cars, no people. I was like, I own this city. And it felt so much like 40 years ago, New York is fantastic. New York is the best walking city in the world, I think. And I don't get fed the way I did by hearing things on the street and things like that the same way, but I still get something from it, and to be able to go to the museums here, to get input here, it's and then there's a spring break art fair, which is great that these two kids started 6-7 years ago, that they started in abandoned buildings, which is very much like the Times Square show, which is allowing young artists to get their work shown. I mean, I think New York is still, I keep hoping the whole thing will just collapse and then we can have fun again. The rich people will leave because it'll be so horrible here.
$300 rent.
Yeah, there you go. And be lucky to get it, you landlord.
That's right. It's a sense of ownership. I grew up, I was born, raised in the city. My family has property here. We own a brownstone in Brooklyn, so something about that just anchors you. And I grew up. I was, I've lived low life. I've experienced high life. So this city is my city, and I've lived in other places, and it's just, it's like a sense of ownership. There's no reason for me to. I can come and go, but there's no reason for me to not be here. I mean,
And also I think New York is like an addiction.
Yeah,
it's like
I think totally, absolutely. There's an
once
addiction.
you live here, you can't
Yeah,
really
hard.
live anywhere else.
It's hard to be as
For me anyway.
stimulated in other places.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just not the
Yeah,
same.
it's magical. I mean, I came from Seattle, and I knew I wanted to come here, and I moved downtown because that was where it was happening. It was like, I haven't left.
No, but my friend Kate was at the Odeon when he read the review, and it was it was pretty. He was broken up. He had a lot of low moments. It's not. I mean, that's once again the cult of the personality has you believe that some people are live these ridiculously ideal lives where everything's fabulous and we're all at Mr. Chow's at 24 hours a day and somehow manage to make art and everything else. But it's just bullshit. Jean-Michel was a flawed person who had a lot of issues, who had a lot of complexes, who was a hurt individual because his mother was taken away from him at the age of 10 or 11, and his father was not a very supportive person. So he had issues, yes, and very, very angry and very damaged, and
his father wouldn't even acknowledge him. I remember somebody telling me about being at the Odeon, and his father wouldn't even acknowledge him.
Yeah, the Kevin Bray story,
Yeah.
It's there's I mean, once again, I think that there's that play on Broadway. It's just. He was just a human like everybody else, and of course nobody has all high moments. I mean, that's some kind of fantasy, He was a human being like everybody else, and happy people don't die from heroin overdoses. I'll tell you right now, that's not even funny. I was a heroin addict for 20 years. I can tell you that firsthand. I don't have to make any guesses about that. And
and at that last show, I remember I was with Jim and Jamie Nares, and we looked at Sean, and he had like coke sores on his face, and he was so beautiful with these coke sores. I mean, before he had coke sores, and all three of us looked at each other and said, "The art world wants him dead. He's too prolific. They want him dead." And I remember all three of us felt the same thing at that moment.
Yeah, the pressures on him.
The pressure on him was unbelievable. It was horrible.
Yeah.
I'd like to publicly thank Sara for allowing me to include a dozen of my photographs.
Yes, thank you, Bobby, so much.
This is the first time I saw the film.
I can't believe it, really?
I saw it on my phone. That's how much and awesome film. It's
Thank you
my
for.
favorite of the documentaries that I've been part of. This was the best one.
Oh, Bobby, that means a
when I saw
lot.
it, when it froze on the frame of Jean in front on Sullivan Street in front of his poetry with his overcoat, he had a green Super Bowl that he was bouncing. You can see that in the High Times spread in one of the frames there. But in that one where he's looking at me, we had come from Kiev. This was around the time of Downtown 81, during December, January, whatever. And we went out for the afternoon. We went to Kiev for breakfast, lunch. And then we went to different locations where he pointed out different tags. And then at that wall, he asked if I would bring him up to the factory to meet Andy. And I didn't think it was appropriate or my place. So in history, Glenn got that job. Glenn was the guy. So that's where I'm written out of history.
Oh, Bobby.
still there, Bobby.
You have a big story, and you have wonderful photographs to tell the story.
So this was a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you, Bobby.
Yeah, I'm glad it wasn't last night and it was tonight.
It's a little warmer tonight.
I barely survived.
It's a little warmer
$20
tonight.
of gas yesterday. I'm too old for that. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Bobby.
You had a question? Yeah.
Yeah, there was a couple different questions. I wasn't sure if this was you were talking in the movie. I think Al about the cut up and Jason and Burroughs. And I know Basquiat hung out at the bunker on Bowery there, 222 Bowery. And I was just curious, what time period was that in his career when he was hanging out in that circle with the Beats?
I'm not good at chronology, and there was many years where we weren't in touch. I wasn't really privy to his his friendships with a few people like Burroughs or anything like that. So I mean Mariah might be able to answer that. She's quite.
And Allen Ginsberg lived down the block from us in Lucy San's building, and he was.
He was around.
Yeah.
Trying to read poetry
you
to
could just
you
walk
all the
down
time.
the street and run into him.
Yeah, there you go.
Some of it was good.